In this video, we're going to go over SQL aliases. SQL aliases are a temporary name given to a table, view, or a column in a table for a specific query. Now, this temporary name means it's just for that query. This doesn't permanently change that table, view, or column in the table. Aliases make columns easy to identify and allow for you to write shorthanded text. And they also make it easier when you have a lot of joins in a query to identify what columns come from what table. So the general syntax for an alias is you select your column name as, and then you cast it as your new name. So let's go over the different scenarios of using an alias. First scenario we're going to do is for a column name. So we're going to take a products table again. And we're going to select product, product ID, and product name or product number. And we're going to run this query. So as the header, we have product ID and product number. Now we want to rename these columns so that their names are shorter, but we can still identify what columns they are. So for product ID, we'll name it P_ID. And for product number, we can name it P_number. And execute. Now your columns will have shorter names that you can still identify what the column's information contains. So that's for how you write aliases for columns. Next, let's write it for a table. Table or view. This is the same syntax. So we'll take the same query from above, take out the aliases for the columns. But with the table, you're not going to see anything for display. It's for naming your table. So you would keep the same column name, but you have to identify your columns with the alias from the table. So we're selecting product table as P, and now we want to identify each column as P dot the column name. So you see now when you write P, it would autocomplete using the columns from the product table, because now P is linked to the product table. So that is for table or view. Table or view, you're not seeing anything. It's just you're identifying your columns with the table alias. So next, let's use aliases in the join, and this is where the table alias comes into good use. So with a join, you're going to want to do the same thing. We're going to select star customer as C. I think it's sales customer. Okay, so now we have the customer table. And to join the table, we're going to use the sales store table. And we're going to label that as S. And then we're going to just add the joins syntax where it's a c.storeid equals s.businessentity. So right now we're just returning all the tables, but now we just want to return particular columns from each table. So we're going to write C, and all of the columns from the customer table will now show. So we want to pick, what do we want? Customer ID right here. We'll add customer ID. And let's add from the other table. Let's pick something from the store table, and we have business ID, the first column here. Add that to the query, and we can add another column from this store table, the name. So we could kind of see we're identifying columns individually, and we can go back to the customer table and add territory ID and run the query. So now we have a join, and when we come back later to review our code, we could easily see that this customer ID is coming from this customer table, and this business entity ID is coming from the store table. So that's the benefits of using Alias really come for tables and views when you're joining. And that's the basic syntax for aliases.